So, hello everyone and welcome. I'm Sarah Hawley from the Learning Planet Institute. I feel a bit like I'm reading the news. I'm not reading the news. We're here to talk about greening school grounds and outdoor learning, which brings together thought leaders to identify and disseminate successful approaches to greening school grounds. And we're lucky enough today to be joined by some key players from this area who are going to talk to us about their work that they are doing. The focus of the session is going to be on three key areas: the relationship between policy, practice and research with regards to driving change. And we're really pleased to be hosting this amazing session. We're really pleased that you can join us to watch the session, and we hope that you will be able to turn your cameras on, perhaps use the chat to introduce yourselves, and there's also a Q&A button that you can use if you have questions. And I'm going to hand us over to get started straight away to Dominic.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, everyone. My name is Dominic Register. I'm the Director of Education at Salzburg Global Seminar, and we have been a partner in the Greening School Grounds and Outdoor Learning initiative that we're going to talk a little bit about since it started back in 2020, I think it was. What we're going to do today is give a brief introduction to the work that we've been doing and some of the resources that have come out of this collective effort so far. And we're then going to go through a series of semi-scaffolded questions with our amazing roster of speakers. So first we're going to hear from Brenda Kessler, who's the Green Schoolyards Program Manager at Children and Nature Network. And Children and Nature Network have really been the engine behind an enormous amount of the Green School Grounds work and were the catalyst for bringing this alliance of partners together. We'll then hear from Ian Mostert, who is one of the featured case studies in the program. One of the things that the initiative has led to is a really fascinating and useful set of resources and case studies that are a source of massive inspiration as to what is possible and what can be achieved in this work. But we were really keen to not focus this full session just on this particular initiative. So we're really lucky today to have three guests with us. So Caroline Escobar-Tello, who's the School and Education Lead at Donut Economics Action Lab. Ashwini Kumar Dakal, who's the Creative Resource Mobilizer at Masterpiece, based in Nepal, and Ditiboho Makeli from South African Cities Network. And Carolina, Ashwini and Ditiboho haven't been involved in the Greening School Grounds and Outdoor Learning project, but they are all very involved in initiatives which connect with it or are aligned with it in some way. And as Sarah said in her introduction, we are really keen to use some of our time today to think about the connections that need to exist or that can be brokered between research, policy, and practice to really drive a change agenda. Because it's one thing for people who are outside of school systems or outside of positions of leading education systems to be advocating for and championing initiatives like this. But what we really need, I think, in order for these things to land and be successful, are able to get the right research and the right evidence in front of key decision makers at the time when they're making those decisions, to be able to build allyship and alliances outside of normal silos in order to get these initiatives to get traction and to really land. So I think it's going to be a really interesting hour. Thank you all very much again for being with us. If you're on the Zoom call, then please do introduce yourselves in the chat and say a little bit about where you're joining from. And we will probably spend about half an hour to 40 minutes with the speakers giving their remarks, and we'll then open it up for a more general conversation with everyone on the call. So if you think of a question when anyone is speaking, please put it in the Q&A. If it's a general comment or it's a resource that you think is useful for the wider audience to have access to, then please share it in the chat. So without further ado, pass to Brenda Kessler, who's going to say a bit more about the initiative and about some of the work that Children and Nature Network have led so brilliantly.
Thank you, Dominic. Sitting here, the unmute button. Thank you. My name is Brenda Kessler. It's really great to be here sharing this space with all of you. Program manager with the Children and Nature Network. I've been working for almost 3 years very closely with our Green Schoolyards work here in the United States, but also globally, leading this project on building some case studies to really learn about what some of the work that's happening around the world in greening school grounds. And just to expand a little bit on some of the points that you have mentioned, Dominic, greening school grounds and outdoor learning is indeed gaining a lot of momentum worldwide. I think without doubt, there's still a lot of work to be done. The road is long ahead. But there are really, really great projects, initiatives, and partnerships that we've learned about that are emerging around this work. And hopefully we're able to convey that in this session, a message of hope, and with all the gloom and gloom, because there's really great work happening both at the grassroots level and at the leadership level that we would love to highlight. And one of the things I really enjoy about this work is that greening school grounds is a very practical and logical, kind of like a tangible strategy that many cities can wrap their head around. And I think it's one of the few strategies that I've seen in this work here in the United States and through our case studies work, where different government agencies, not just education, but when you think about planning departments, sustainability offices, transportation, just across agencies coming together, given the co-benefits that emerge from this work. And juggling here slides too. I think one of the reasons why it's gaining so much traction is because when you look closely at this work, you'll see that it aligns with many of the frameworks that you might have already heard about. I had the opportunity to be at COP28 last month, along with Sarah, who just very kindly gave her an intro, and many other colleagues. And while there were many interesting conversations, I think there's a consensus that if we are going to achieve any of the sustainable development goals, we need to transform our education system, including the physical and the outdoor spaces where children spend a lot of time in. We have been working very closely with the Greening Schools pillar as part of the UNESCO's Greening Education Partnership, which has 4 pillars, and they all go hand in hand. But in this graphic, you can see how all of these benefits kind of come together with greening school grounds and outdoor learning. We really need to inspire young people with a lifelong connection to the natural world and a commitment to protecting nature. And so to me, this means one tangible way is doing it in the spaces that are directly available to them. And schoolyards, if you think about them from a city perspective, everybody's, Paris has, in the case of Paris, they talk about how every child is walking distance from a schoolyard. So with that said, I would love to bring in some of our panelists in today, and I'll start with Ian, because building on that case study that we did in Rotterdam, there's a huge community engagement component in the work that they do. And I would love to hear from Ian. You know, this work can't happen without the community buy-in. So I would love to hear, what did you do, or what activities are you doing to engage the community, and not just the community, but a wide variety of practitioners that come into these projects? And with that, I'll open it up to Ian.
Okay, thank you. Nice you are here all. Thanks for listening. About 10 years ago, we started a concept, and 15 years ago, I was involved with some greening school grounds already, and many people were complaining about dirt or safety issues or regulations, etc. So I only heard problems. But when you look at the world where the children grew up, it wasn't that great. So 10 years ago, we started a new program, and one part of the program was the schools had to take part of the whole concept. And the concept is outdoor learning, but also opening the gates for the community, opening the gates for children so they can play every day in their own neighborhood. And in the beginning, that was really hard for the schools. So they get a responsibility extra, they thought. But they also got a lot of budget, and we organized some policy. In the first year, there was just one school who would like to participate. But all schools, we told, you must be the ambassador for the next school. And you have to take your responsibility for the children, not for yourself, not for the parents, not for a professional, but take your responsibility for the children. And when I look back, I'm really happy they participated in the concept, but I will not show their school ground as an example. But we needed them to grow and to grow and to grow. And now it's the new normal, and it's more normal to involve the community and to open the gates for the neighborhood to let children play and families who can exercise. And 50% of the budget is we are looking for how many children will live in neighborhoods and how health data is going on, etc. But the other 50% is about the motivation. And we are looking for a vision from the school and the school team. And also if there is a kind of a soul for the continuity for the project. And because of involving the children, the parents, the neighborhood, and of course the teachers, there's a whole community of people who are involved, but they become the owner of the whole project. And after 2 years, we can go away. And the continuity of the project is going on. It's theirs, it's not ours. So we just help them in the beginning, and they can do a lot by themselves. And we involve them in network with other schools. So they can also discuss with each other how they can develop themselves more and more. And many times it's about practical stuff, about the dirt inside the school. How do you fix that? And outdoor lessons, how do you manage that, etc. Is that good enough for now? Or too long?
No. It's great. And I want to play a video that you shared with us that kind of ties it all together. If I can go back to sharing my screen
Maybe
here.
a really important point. When I'm talking about this, people understand it's my opinion, but when the children, teachers, parents, etc. tell their story, it's much stronger and they can help other schools. So here you can see some stories.
We zien allemaal mooie klanten. We hebben dit samen met onze groep gecreëerd en ook met de andere klassen. En het is best wel mooi geworden.
Dit is ons nieuwe plein, een nieuw plein van Kindcentrum De Vlinder. Wij hebben dat van de gemeente in beheer gekregen. En daardoor konden wij het middenstuk van het plein helemaal zelf inrichten. Dat hebben we gedaan samen met de kinderen en samen met de buurtbewoners. En ja, de kinderen wilden zand, wilden modder, wilden water. En de buurt wilde graag bloemen en planten en dat het er mooi uitzag.
Je bent hier in Dordrecht op het groen-blauwe schoolplein van de basisschool. Het plein was hiervoor helemaal betegeld. Er was niks aan. Er werd dus vooral veel gerend en ook wel aardig wat onrust heerste er dan. Gewoon dat kinderen zich verveelden. We hadden heel veel plassen in de herfst en in de winter op het plein. Toen hebben we met het schoolpleinadvies een plan gemaakt, ook met de kinderen samen, van wat hebben we nodig, wat vinden we leuk, wat willen we graag op het plein. We hebben nu dus een klimaatadaptief plein. Er gebeuren meer lessen buiten, dus we hebben een insectenhotel, er komt een moestuin.
We zijn op het schoolplein van de Margrietschool in Rotterdam, in Blijdorp. Nou, mijn zoontje 7, die zit hier op school, maar we wonen hier ook om de hoek. Dus ook na schooltijd gaat hij heel vaak met kinderen uit de buurt, met zijn buurjongens hier naartoe om hier lekker te spelen. En ik ben er eigenlijk zelf ook regelmatig.
Ze wanen zich echt in de natuur. En dat is ook eigenlijk de bedoeling dat kinderen op het schoolplein ook in een natuurlijke omgeving zitten.
Eerst was het gewoon hier oud hier en dan alleen maar glijbaan en de klimmerij. Dus dat vonden wij niet zo leuk. En groen staat mooier bij overal. Dus daarom vonden we het beter. Gewoon verbeteren, net als ons. Heel veel groen en minder stenen.
All right. Engaging in the mud play and the environmental education that happens as a co-benefit from being outside, mental, physical health. But what are some of the hidden benefits that might not be, they might not be so obvious when we think about green schoolyards, and how do they, fit into a bigger piece of the puzzle when we're trying to advance community health and other priorities that cities might have? And how does this make sense for other agencies and not just from the education and health sector?
Thank you, Brenda. Great to be here, and beautiful example set by Ian to bring my point in. Definitely when we frame education in settings that allow for different experiences to emerge, but as well for all the diversity of humans that we are to play their role, especially from a young age, it means that some of these benefits that may be uncovered, but I see them quite clearly in that video, for example, is that if you engage from the heart, from a very early age, young people, it means that you're developing a relationship with nature from the beginning, from that engagement that is a reciprocal relationship where we understand perhaps what is our purpose and our role and the impact that we can have in nature, that we are nature, so that we begin to understand that education doesn't happen in an isolated room within the walls, but actually that it is part of who we are and how we will behave and shape society as we grow up and etc. So it begins to also bring attention in a very experiential way, an engaging way for children of how we live in a planet and we have different social boundaries and ecological boundaries that mean that we have a responsibility towards the world that we live in, but also with how we engage with others, with humans and animals and insects, etc. Right? So it brings all these benefits of bringing from a very early age that engagement, that awareness, and that's what we talk about in donut economics with the donut, and I can bring that later on as well. Is this idea of the donut, of wanting to live in this fleshy part of the donut, right? Within the social boundaries, the social foundation that is a dignified life where everyone can live a thriving life, but also understanding that there are ecological boundaries that we have to respect. So this is a really good way for children to understand that concept through play and by seeing what happens when they are in nature and how they affect, and it affects us as well, that we are part of that system.
Great, thank you, Carolina. Donut economics work is absolutely fascinating and fantastic, and this idea of planetary boundaries, if you're not already familiar with it, then please have a look at the Deal website. What we'd love to do now is bring Diteboho Makaleli into the conversation, if that's okay. So Diteboho, your work with South African Cities Network is obviously at a city scale, so working on a larger scale in many ways than some of the examples we've already heard. And we'd love to hear about examples from you about how you help cities incorporate these kind of initiatives into their plans and policies. How do you show that this kind of initiative, not this specific one, needs to be a priority? And it's not just another thing that's being asked of cities, but is actually something of mutual benefit.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to contribute to this discussion, and it's lovely to see the participants coming from different parts of the world. So at the South African Cities Network, we see greening school grounds as a transformative approach, not just another burden on our cities or our city officials. And we see it as about unlocking a triple win, really, for cities, for communities, and of course, for the environment. yes, there is the challenge that city officials often face competing priorities and resource constraints. And so greening school grounds, I mean, while it might be vital, it can feel like one more thing for them to do. And so our approach really to enable the integration of school greening programs into existing programs and policies of cities is to encourage integration and not isolation, which means that we advocate for our cities to incorporate school greening programs within wider greening, city greening programs, so that it's not seen as an add-on or a nice to have, so that they exist within programs that cities are already doing. And a lot of our cities at the moment have developed climate action plans, and they have different activities and programs designed around mitigation and adaptation. And so we encourage them to incorporate greening programs as part of those climate action plans and programs, so that there's buy-in across all city departments, so that it's not seen just So
Recording
in
in
our
progress.
context, we have this historical legacy of segregated development in the country and segregated spatial planning, which has created a number of problems, but also created a green divide where you find historically disadvantaged areas don't have or have very little green open spaces, very little greenery, trees, food gardens, etc. And so when cities are doing these programs, we encourage them to look beyond the environmental aspect, but look at the social aspects as well. And this also includes issues like food security. So when we're greening school grounds, it's also about how do you make sure that the greening aspects provide food security for the children that go to that school, but also their families and surrounding communities. And you enable entrepreneurship to happen so people can benefit from having these school gardens, food gardens in school. The other aspect is that we have issues of water insecurity in the country. We're a very water scarce country. And so greening schools initiatives also focus around water management and educating children around the impacts of droughts and not having water, and how that can be managed through different nature-based solutions in schools. And there are a number of examples. I can mention Johannesburg in particular. They have a food gardens for schools program where the city partners with the private sector and NGOs to establish vegetable gardens, which of course improves food security for the school itself, but also for the surrounding families and children that go to that school. And then there's the city of Durban or eThekwini that has a Waterwise Schools initiative in collaboration with our National Biodiversity Institute. So there are a number of these programs happening in various parts and at various stages in the country. And all of this, of course, needs more advocacy, more scaling up, and more encouragement of partnerships with all of society. And so that it's not isolated projects that cities do ad hoc or as and when there's funding available. I'll pause there and be open to questions later on. Thanks, Dominic, back to you.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you very much, Teboho. It's really interesting to hear more about the citywide approach, because we tried to do something analogous. I think we did do something analogous with the Green School Grounds advocacy work of trying to think about multiple benefits to the initiative. So we had a set of arguments around the value of play and the connection with Green School Grounds and play, again around health and well-being, and then climate resilience, community engagement, and education. And it was trying to get the initiative to appeal to a broad base of allies and stakeholders. And as Teboho said, there will be an opportunity for questions to the speakers. So please take advantage of the Q&A function on Zoom, or put the question directly in the chat if that is easier for you. What I'd love to do now is bring Ashwini into the conversation, if that's okay. And thank you for being so patient and waiting. So it would be really great to hear a little bit more about your work, but then also some of the success stories or examples that you know of how nature-based education or greening school grounds has positively impacted on students' education and overall well-being. And after Ashwini's answered, we could open that up for Ian and Carolina and Teboho and Brenda, if you've got other examples as well. It'd be lovely to hear them. But Ashwini, you first, please.
Thank you, Dominic. Hi everyone, I'm Ashwini Dokal from Nepal. Also, I'm a resource mobilizer from Masterpiece. Masterpiece, we connect, support, and strengthen CSOs all over the world. Currently, we are connected in more than 45 countries with 60 organizations. And here, to tap into the question Dominic just raised, I would like to bring a great example, and also I would say it's really the local level, grassroots level example based in Nepal, how they knowingly, unknowingly are very much engaging with greening school and outdoor learning. So there is this organization called Peace for People who works just not far away, let's say 2 to 3 hours far away from the capital city of Kathmandu, but it is very much rural, And what they did was, first they built this school from scratch. They got the fund. They built the physical structure of the school. Then they introduced, they admitted the students. And later, what they did really fascinates me, and also I'm very much happy to share in this particular session, is that they try to green their school environment by painting the walls in a different creative way, by just building gardens, how they surround the schools in the first phase. And in the second phase, they decided that it's not only about education for all, because that was their first motive. Then they decided how we can do quality education for all. Then they searched this quality term a lot. And what they did was they introduced different kind of curriculums, mostly based on learn by doing based this physical education into the non-formal education curriculum, only in that particular school. And they use sports, they use music, this community gardening, they build the school this environment to play, like Ian shared about the playing with the moths, connecting with the nature. And as I told you in the beginning, the area is rural part of Nepal, so you can imagine how challenging it is to motivate to go to school. And what they found is that after introducing this greening school and outdoor learning, the amount of students going to the school is massively increased. Parents are very much motivated. They found that, before they used to think, we are very much far away from the local city. We are quite underdeveloped. There is nothing going to happen if you send school my children or not. Rather, they help me in my household chores, or they can help me with working to earn some extra money. But later, with this initiative, they found that their children are learning a lot. Their mental being is very much improved, a lot of connection, and the parents is not only impacted these particular schools or teachers or children, but the parents, the society, they all came into together. Then now they are building holistic approach to how they can involve these 5 different elements to work together. So this is a fantastic, elements. And one, I would like to stop sharing one more point. And also, when I think about sharing these examples, those kids now, when they grow up in 10 years, 15 years, I think they are the drivers of transformation, what we are discussing today. Because, it's not only about we achieve something today and we forget it, but in the long run, that this, like Brenda, you said in the beginning, this is still not popular concept, but in 15 years, through those children, when they become drivers of transformation, this could be the popular topic, and we don't have to focus much more on just telling them what is this. Rather, we can talk about how to make it more effective, more efficient, more innovative. So yeah, it's a great story. I would like to stop here. Maybe later I can share more also about how Masterpiece is working with this to somewhere around this topic. And also I see my friend Kailash, who is from Pakistan. Also later he can share. He also works a lot with schools in Pakistan. If you think it's relevant, also feel free to share. So Dominic, I stop here and happy to share.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much, Ashwini. Same question to Brenda and Ian and Carolina and Titiboa, just exciting examples of the value or benefit.
I wanted to jump in quickly and highlight, Ashwini, you gave us a great example of how one project can sometimes catalyze, energize a community, right? Sometimes we think this work can seem too big to handle when you're thinking about it as a citywide or district-wide, as we say in the United States. But sometimes it's the small projects, the small wins that snowball into bigger initiatives. And Litiboho, you mentioned too something very important that is key to this movement is the sharing, the peer learning portion of it, and the sharing of best practices, because that's really how we've seen the movement grow from learning how it works in one city. And there's no set model. When we were engaging in this work, we developed 13 case studies, knowing that there are many models for greening school grounds, and they look very different across geographies, because you have to take into the different geographic constraints, right? Like the climate and simply the terrain, the geographic components. So I would love to hear how has peer learning or what activities around peer learning have catalyzed movement in either of the way you've seen the work, either in South Africa or Ian in Rotterdam. I know that there's been many initiatives that you've been part of, like the Cool Schools Project, Urban 95, all of these opportunities that open it up for peer learning and for sharing of best practices. How has that helped?
Perhaps I can go first. So what we've seen is that with the big cities, we as the South African Cities Network focus on the metropolitan municipalities, which are 8 of the largest cities in South Africa. What we've seen is that the knowledge sharing has then trickled down to smaller towns around these bigger metropoles. So that's also been very encouraging to see that what happens at a large city scale can also be applicable at a smaller town scale. And the other thing that we've seen is that instead of city or town, even these small town practitioners traveling to the global north, to European cities on study tours, they now do study tours amongst themselves, because they realize that our context and the knowledge that is there is more applicable in their own context. So learning from each other, learning from different regions within the country is quite important. The other thing is that we've seen that how to broker partnerships between different sectors of society is also a learning area and a big knowledge exchange area. Because in some of the big cities, you have these big corporate companies who have corporate social investment initiatives that they have to do. And what has happened is that they've partnered with the municipalities, and that shows other cities, how that is possible. You know, how can you partner with private sector? How can you bring in NGOs? While in some cities, the NGOs are the ones that are quite strong and they just bring along the cities or the city officials to partner and provide land or extend school grounds for various reasons. So it's different approaches for different contexts, but we're happy to see that there's this trickle down effect happening with others, with smaller towns.
Ian, thank you.
Yes. I think there are many levels of organizing ambassadors, and I love the level of the children themselves. It's about them, so I like it when they share their stories and their adventures with other children. And what we also see, the other level are the parents. 10 years ago, they were afraid for risks and dirt, etc. But now they asking more and more for the green school grounds to let their children play and learn in that kind of environment. There are still many parents who had to get rid of their awareness or afraidness for risks, but we try to tell them what the benefits are. And many teachers are also happy. They see what happens with the children, but they're also working in a green space. So it's also doing something for their own workspace. When you work in a green space, that's really different than working under some lamps inside. We also have some ambassadors at the policy level. So we bring civil servants together, and they can also learn from each other how you can manage, for example, subsidy projects. And also those professionals we have to help. Don't be afraid for risks or regulations, etc. You can fix everything. You don't have to be afraid. And also on the elderman level or the ministry level, we also have some ambassadors. And many times we hear from the policymakers, give me numbers, give me numbers. We give numbers and what do you want? And so some of the ambassadors tell us also, we also don't do anything with numbers and monitoring about Christmas. Every year we do the Santa Claus, but we don't monitor what happens with the social cohesion, for example. So when you use your common sense, just do it. And that kind of stories we share and make it simple and just do it. That's on all the levels what we are organizing. And with the organizing communication method, we hope we can share a lot of stories from those people in their own networks. And it's growing quickly. Yeah.
Carolina, is there anything you would like to add from your work?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we still have time, but if we're okay for time, I can just share from, I suppose, that the work that we've been doing in different contexts in education from the education theme in Deal is this approximation to different countries around the world, right? And one of the issues that we see as well with greening spaces is that the idea of what education may be looks very different in different contexts, right? So in many cases, what we've seen, as we have heard today, that relationship between who is an educator and who is a learner is also challenged. And in many contexts, like 2-3 months ago, we were doing some sessions of learning about the donut in different contexts in the Global South. And what we found is that the engagement from the children, when they can see that they have a lot to say, to teach, is facilitated better when you're in an outer space as well. So I think that's also another really beautiful learning of the benefits that may come out of these case studies is that younger generations engage from a more proactive framing, position, but also learning what are their surroundings and becoming proud of what they have. And I think it has come up here as well. So being proud of their local context as well, and realizing the value that it has for who they are and what their cities or countries may be as well in the future. There's a number of different case studies which I would go in a particular case, but I just wanted to bring that flavor, what it means to challenge that transformative relationship between learner and teachers, who is really learning. And I think we have a lot to learn from young people, and it's facilitated better in those spaces outdoors.
Absolutely agree. I think that also aligns very powerfully with other initiatives going on around the sort of wider global education transformation initiative, and thinking about new kinds of intergenerational collaboration between teachers and students, and between other learners and adult allies, as they're often described, as thinking about the core purpose of education and how and where learning needs to take place and what kind of learning needs to take place. Ian, were you signaling you were coming into the conversation?
Yeah,
great.
I was also thinking about the international study tour we did, and I can see many differences in culture, also about the value of the green school grounds. And in Europe, it's a growing value of the green school grounds. When you get a green school ground, the government help you, or the school is helping you. But we also see some other parts, and when you get a green school ground or greening play park, it's a lower value. So some parts of the world you have to get some fancy plastic materials, and so I think we also have to organize the narrative of value of the green school grounds, what the benefits are for children and for families. So we have to discuss that with many teachers, many parents, many children, and of course policymakers, I think.
I think it's interesting because for people who are already invested in the work, already believe in it, the arguments are sort of self-evident. But do you find when you're advocating for a stronger role for nature in education, and this is to all of you, are you still running up against people who need to be convinced of the value of this, and that this is an important process of learning and of education in the 21st century? And when you do, I suppose the partner question is, when you do, what are the arguments that you find most effective, or help convince or persuade the unconvinced?
Is that question for me?
Everyone.
Oh, sorry, Ian, are you going to go ahead?
Okay, go.
Okay, sorry. No, so I was saying, in our context, the entry point is predominantly around food security, because of the inequality levels we have, and the focus is generally in the historically disadvantaged areas. And so the entry point around greening school grounds is always around, or not always, but mostly around food security, and ensuring that the communities around the school can benefit from having those food gardens, whether through subsistence, provisions, everyday food that's available from the school, or also developing entrepreneurs, people who'd like to then go and sell the vegetables beyond the school grounds. And so there's that relationship and partnership with the community and the school around food gardens, because then it's not just about the school, but it's about the community and the subsistence of the community. And then it evolves from school food gardens, then it can evolve to tree planting, creating better playgrounds, like, play areas where kids can really play with nature and learn about nature. The argument in some areas is that, well, we have bigger issues to deal with. We don't have houses, we don't have water, we don't have sanitation. So you're telling us to invest money in a nice to have. So the argument is always about the basic services that our communities need versus what is seen as a luxury. But this entry point of food security has worked very well in a number of communities. Thanks.
I was listening to a really interesting podcast last weekend about allotments. There's a book coming out in the UK later this year about the history of allotments and how it's a sort of much more radical social movement than people often think. But one of the pieces of research they were talking about is how in any time of crisis, there is always an increase in people's interest. So during the pandemic, for example, there was a massive spike in interest in people asking for allotments.
Have we lost Dominic?
I think so.
Okay. I can come in on that if that's okay.
Sure. Yes.
Well, he
Yes.
comes-
Go ahead, Carolina.
I was thinking about, when we move to outer spaces, right? At the end of the day, and Dominic is back. We lost you for a minute, but I was picking up, what you were saying of how in the pandemic we moved to outer spaces more and the allotments. And I think one of the things that we bring in with this idea of donut economics and is to rethink what is education about, right? Like, so ultimately what we're trying to do is to build better futures, right? To be able to build worlds where everyone can thrive with a dignified life, but without going those ecological boundaries, right? And so if we question that again, the intention is to think, if children have to grow up with that, and how do we engage them from the heart? How do we provide experiences that allow them to come from the rational, which is what usually we learn within the walls, but then also how do we engage our hands, right? How do we engage our experiences, our heart in general? How do we engage from our own positionalities in those contexts that we're in? And what best a scenario to do so in an outer space, right? Where children are not learning from the theory, but from that practice of actually interacting with all those things, right? Like understanding what's my role and how do I affect this? And I planted these seeds, and months later, we have all these crops. And, I need to move a lot and run a lot. So I thrive better if I'm learning outdoors. So it's all this idea of how do we move away from this education that presupposes that we have to be sitting down and in one direction with the teacher to this dynamics of of interchanging who is learning from who and who else is involved beyond the rational and obviously nature around us.
Ashwini, were you going to add something there?
Yeah, I would just like to take 1 or 2 minutes to also engage in this conversation. Also, maybe it could be a different topic, but also, I was thinking like the world we live in sometimes is quite strange, I would say, not in a bad way, but I would say in a good way. And a lot of focuses, a lot of, this media, the social media, there's a lot of focus sometimes is on the differences, like the issues rather than, the amazing work that people are doing, whether it can be seen in the mainstream or cannot seen, but there are a lot of common things that has been going on. And as a masterpiece, we always say, recently we are 8 billion, the population. And we said it's not 8 billion issues, it's 8 billion talents. Each person has unique talents, and how we can mobilize these unique talents. Because if you mobilize these talents, then we just we are looking to the full glass of water, not the half glass of water. So we started this initiative called Cool Leaders. It's like cool, like being cool, and leaders. So it's kind of in a one word. So also you can think it as a two side of a coin. So cool and the leaders. So the cool is also about being cool, like you are doing something nice, and also about how we can cool down the temperature. It's also related to the climate that we are all one way or another we are stuck in. And the leaders part, I just mentioned that everyone has their talent that they can inspire, maybe to the one people, more than one, or the larger community. So this Cool Leaders Initiatives is the first to give this platform and bring this local people, women, marginalized community, the local initiative to the global scale by giving them proper platform, platform this how to say, like encouragement. What we have been doing is we did in the beginning, we did campaign to bring their voice, their statement, also could be on climate, could be on gender, and slowly now we are also more focusing on dialogues. We did series of cool talks and Lite Boho, sorry if I pronounce correctly. We did amazing 2 cool talks in related to food security in Sri Lanka and also in Burundi, that we try to engage these 2 different countries and how they can learn from each other. So, at the end of the day, it's about how we bring the dialogues and the conversation into the actions, and that actions doesn't always have to be big. It can be very small, simple. You can plant 1 tree in your garden that that you can harvest that one, or you can do some advocacy, whatever you can use through writing, through painting, through sports. So we'd like to have this Cool Leaders campaign go on, to involve more and more youngsters, especially youngsters, that they can actually inspire at least them and their community. Then this all the messages can be all around the world. So I also invite all of you to be a cool leaders. We are already cool leaders, being the conversation. And just I'd like to end my point with that Cool Leaders Initiative. I'll put in the chat for your further information.
It sounds to me, Ashwini, that Cool Leaders needs to partner up with Cool Schools. there is a Cool
Absolutely.
There is with that same playful intention with the word. There is a Cool Schools project that's mostly based in Europe, but focused on making schools cool, but at the same time combating the urban heat island. We have 2 minutes left, and you bring up a perfect way of closing this conversation, Ashwini. We need to focus on the actions. We need to focus on the positive, even if they're small actions. And in a world where there's a lot of negative news, I would love for our panelists, Ian, Carolina, Lite Boho, to share, as closing, what are some concrete actions? How can people get engaged? If you were to invite the public to engage in this work, what would you invite them to do? What are some small steps they can take? And I have my own that I want to share at the end. So I'll open it up very shortly because we only have 2 minutes left. So
I've just shared the deals link for everyone to browse when they have time. But I wanted to say, with examples, this is a community platform. In everything that we do is open in the commons for everyone to use. And there's a huge worldwide community of people like us, people who are taking action and sharing their stories and the tools that they've been developing in different things, one in particular with education. So there's a wide array, a wide library of little windows around the world of what people are doing and how you can readapt them to your context. How can you learn from it? How can you feedback, etc. So I would encourage you to use that as a wide library of positive examples.
Yeah, I would say that find a school near you, wherever you are in the world. Find a school near you and find out what they're doing about greening the school grounds. They might already be doing something, and you be part of that. If not, you could help support in any way and raise awareness around greening school ground. Thanks.
Ashwini or Ian, any final recommendations to engage?
Yes. What I love is let children experience what happens, and they will tell their story to the other, and organize one thing really good, so they feel the value and they share the value with others.
Yeah, and I would like to also say, you know, we already discussed, and Brenda, you said, you know, you have a cool school with your partner. So I think also the foundation is to have to reach to the meaningful resources to more co-creation amongst the like-minded people, like-minded stakeholders, and I'm very much happy and also very much open to any possible co-creation in personal level, in professional level. Let's work together, because that is the only way that, you know, this all our fruitful conversation can result into something impactful. So yeah, and thank for the great session, LPI as well.
Yeah. No, thank you. That is incredibly important, those small actions that lead to bigger initiatives. And I have a very small action that I can share, and as endorsing, as part of this work, we developed a Greening School Grounds action agenda, a global agenda that outlines 24 concrete actions that can happen both at the federal, national, state, and local level. And I'm going to drop it into chat. I welcome our audience to sign on to the agenda, take a look at it, and like Lee Teboho mentioned, just start local and learn about what is happening directly in your neighborhood, and you might be surprised. Hopefully there are some good projects around Greening School Grounds will emerge from that. But thank you to our speakers. Dominic, do you want to add anything? Just thank you for your time and commitment to this work.
Thank you everyone, and thank you Learning Planet for hosting us.
Thank you everyone.
Bye.
Lovely
Thank
to see
you.
everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.